Briony, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Awesome. Great to have you here. Let's kind of throw it back to maybe when you were first starting to think about what you might want to do with your life, this thing called work and career.
I know,
What were
it's so
your
funny, isn't it?
what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny to like throw back to now. When you're 16, 17, you're so young and you don't have like the world experience. So
Mm,
I didn't know what I wanted to do until my final year of high school when I started doing legal studies as a subject. And there was something about legal studies. I just loved it. I was so interested in the law, in legislation. It really like clicked with my brain. But as I had only discovered it in year 12, I hadn't then chosen other subjects to kind of support me getting the score to get into law.
mm,
So I took kind of a slightly, a roundabout path. So from high school, I went and did a 2-year advanced diploma to essentially become either like a conveyancing clerk or a legal secretary,
mhm.
because I think I knew like I want to experience what this is like in the real world
Yeah.
before doing a law degree. Like it was like I want to see what it's like. So I was essentially doing property transactions, so buying, selling real estate, like helping clients with that. And while it's not the most rock and roll area of law, I did really like it, and it really made me think, oh no, this is what I want to do as a career. So I applied at the wise old age of 21 to be a mature law student. And
That's crazy.
yeah, the
How
other
is 21 a mature
I know.
mature
The other
student?
students were like, she's actually not old enough. But at the time, so, this is like more than 20 years ago now. At the time, to do a degree like online was unusual.
Mm,
We didn't have video conferencing and things like that. So I was doing the degree online with Deakin University and working full time. And so it was a really intense 6 years of my
yeah.
life to be juggling those two things. But I was very focused on the like end result of like, I can't
Mm,
wait to be a lawyer. Like I thought that was the pinnacle for me. Like that's I was
yeah.
so excited about it.
And how was the reality of, of that when it actually happened?
Yeah, I think that like, and even though I had kind of set myself up of like, I want to practice, I want the experience of working in a law firm while doing the degree, there was still something about it that wasn't me. I felt
Mm,
like I was almost like playing a role of like who I thought I had to be. And I thought there's
yeah.
parts of my personality that I have to suppress. I have to be a serious person. And I'm just not a serious person. And also, I had a really bad habit. I was a huge procrastinator. And that's not great when you're a student because you've got assignments to do.
Mm,
It's also really bad when you're doing property transactions in conveyancing. And I actually had like a skills session where the business had got in a coach, because this was one of the top Australian law firms I was working for at the time. And she said, oh, you've got a cliffhanger personality type. Like you're feeding on the adrenaline of like the last minute.
mm,
She's like, that's the worst personality type for this job. Like,
yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was like, that's a bit of a wake up call. But now, actually, what a big learning for me was that I could change that. I could learn a better habit. And this is something, Emma, that you might find funny, because the person that I learned it from is more well known in the UK than Australia. And he's a magician. His name is Darren Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
So
him. Yeah.
he does a lot around like psychology and the things that we tell ourselves and the stories that we
Yeah.
tell ourselves. And in one of his books, he talked about what procrastination is and why we do it. And
Mm,
so to get around procrastinating, rather than focusing on the painful of the assignment, I've got this assignment to do, it's going to be so painful, I really don't want to do it. You practice focusing on how relieved you will be when you have done the task instead.
yeah.
And actually, if you do it a few times and really let yourself sit in that emotion of like, hey, it's the night before the assignment is due and I've done the assignment.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is a really
I'm relaxed.
yeah.
I'm chilled.
And
Yeah.
then that's how you can break like procrastination being a really toxic, like toxic negative effect on your career. And that for me was a really enlightening thing of, okay, here's something that I'm doing that's like a self-sabotage, but I can change it. I can fix this.
Yeah.
And so that was a really great thing that I wish I could. Wish Briony
Yeah.
back then knew how to not be a procrastinator.
It's a really good point, isn't it? Because I think some of those, innate behavioral things when it comes to careers are certainly the information itself is incredibly worthwhile. I think the danger is sometimes they can be used to box people into certain streams or, oh, you're a super organized person. You should be
Yes.
XYZ.
Yeah.
You're this, you shouldn't do this type of career or whatever it is, which I really don't agree with. But I think the more important point that you hit on there is just because that's a behavior or a habit that comes quite naturally to you doesn't mean that you can't change it. If you know
Exactly.
it's there and you realize that it's not serving you, then you've got the power to actually be able to change that. And it's funny you mentioned Darren Brown. He did really like reinvent himself, didn't he? Because he was like a TV magician in the UK, but now he's really kind of turned more to that kind of mentalist type show, and as you say, writes about behavioral change and all that kind of thing. It's really interesting. I love stuff like that too. I find it really fascinating. So.
Yeah. And that's it. I wish, to put the label of like a cliffhanger on someone, like I wish they had have given me some kind of support. Of like, and maybe at the time they didn't know how I could change that behavior or anything, but it was very much just like, okay, yeah, you really don't match the role that you're doing. And you're like, okay, well, what then? So
I think that's the danger, isn't it? Like it labels someone and that can really be quite damaging if not kind of handled correctly.
Yeah. And I think only since then, like I've read that, I can't remember what the book is, but it's the book all about whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that you cannot change those qualities of yourself as a person? And being a procrastinator was something that I didn't think I could ever change that. So, that's been a very like liberating thing to learn. But so I had been working in that role. It was actually like a maternity leave cover role. So the contract came to an end and it was in 2009, which again, that feels like a million years ago. But that was also when the global financial crisis hit.
Yeah.
It was not a great time to be a lawyer because the law firms were laying off huge amounts of the staff. It was something like 20% at the firm that I was at. But I had, just by kind of coincidence, I had booked a trip to go to Japan. And so I'd never gone overseas before. Why I picked Japan, it's because of my love of Neighbours, the TV show. And they were talking about Japan in an episode. And I thought, wow, Japan sounds cool. I could go there. Like, just completely.
It's not the link that immediately springs to mind, is it? I went to Japan because of Neighbours.
Also, for someone who'd never been overseas, to pick one of the hardest countries to travel in. Seeing as I didn't know any Japanese or anything.
Yeah.
So I booked a Intrepid tour while I was in Japan. And on the Intrepid tour, there was a lovely gentleman sitting opposite me. And I thought, oh, he's really cute. Like I was 26 at the time. Oh, no, sorry. I was 24 at the time. And I thought, oh, he's really cute. And then he started talking and he had this beautiful Scottish accent. And we just really hit it off. I think I knew straight away that he would be my husband one day, which sounds terrifying, creepy. But there was just something about that like, crossing paths in Tokyo. He had just been living in Australia and was on his way back to Scotland. So I essentially, I didn't have anything keeping me in Australia at that point. Like the role had finished, my contract role had finished. And I thought, oh, just move to Scotland. Like, why not?
Just move to Scotland.
Yes, I know.
Such a simple thing.
And I do think that generally I would say everyone was very supportive of my decision because they were like, he must be special if she's going to go over there with him. And I kind of felt like, well, if it doesn't work out romantically, like we would be good friends and things like that. But I just knew, like I just had to follow my
Mm.
heart. And I think
Mm.
while this conversation is about career and all the other episodes that I've listened to as well, it's not just career that shapes your life, you know.
No,
You've
not
got
at
to
all.
follow those things that happen. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it's great that you mention it, because I actually think it's one of the main reasons that I wanted to have this conversation. Exactly as you said, you know, I talk about career and it's all very kind of focused on the work side of things, but career is just one part of your life. And the thing that ultimately is going to have the greatest impact on your life as a whole and how happy you are in your life is who your partner is, you know?
I know.
So
Yeah.
actually making a move for love, or what was probably potential love at that stage, because
Yeah.
you hadn't known him very long,
Yeah.
is, you know, actually, isn't that what life is all
Mm.
about?
I know. It felt like, now that I look back on it, it really felt like that crossroads decision.
Mm,
I either was going to go to Scotland and be with him and explore that part, or I would have stayed in Melbourne and continued being a lawyer.
yeah.
But I just felt like that was a very unfulfilling choice, I suppose, of like, oh, I'm just going
Yeah.
to keep focusing on my career. Whereas, you know, growing up, I loved Britpop. I loved everything to do with the UK. The idea of going to live there, like that seemed so exciting to me.
Mm,
And I think I was really ready to take like that big brave step of going, do you know what? I'm going to leave my comfort zone. I'm going to go to the other side of the world and have that real like European
mm,
experience, but also like just knowing that I was going to be with the man that was going to become my
mm,
husband. There was a lot of like comfort and reassurance in that.
yeah.
So it was scary to move to Scotland, partly because Scotland actually has a different legal system to Australia. So my law degree essentially counted for nothing over there. So I had been doing my law degree and working for 6 years. I
Yeah.
then got to Scotland and it was like, cool, well, you can start from
Yeah.
scratch. You need to
Yeah,
do a
that doesn't
degree,
mean anything.
you need to do a traineeship. And it was like, oh wow, this is hard.
Mm,
So I kind of had to pivot, you know, as you do when you kind of come up against these roadblocks. So I started volunteering at a community law centre. And that was something that I had done in Australia, of just, you know, helping people who they couldn't afford
mm,
legal advice, but they were coming in with housing issues and debt issues. And through that, I became connected to the university that was based next door. And I remember there was a time, so my parents came over for our wedding, and my dad was actually talking to someone
hang on,
from.
we've skipped forward
Oh
something
yeah,
really
sorry, we
important
got to
here.
the wedding. We got to the wedding.
Key point.
Yeah, key point. We got
There was
married.
a wedding.
The relationship was going amazingly, and that's like I always say, like he's the only person I ever even thought about marrying. I just could see it. I could just see, oh, we'll get married.
I
Um,
just love that
yeah,
you knew. Like,
yeah,
it's
I
just
just
so
knew.
cool. Like, I just, and as you tell the story, you knew, like, pretty quickly. Like,
Yeah,
you met
I
him
knew
and
that.
you
I knew
had
that
this thought in
day.
your
I knew
head.
that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's so
that's
cool. I love
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. There was like a very kind of deep down intuition, and
Mm,
I think there was things that made me like really like trust myself. So
yeah.
a big thing for me was like, is he really, is he really as nice as he seems? And then I met his parents and his brother, and I was like, oh my gosh, he is actually really this lovely. Like, you know, you think he's just putting on this act. And then, like,
Yeah.
everyone that I met in his life just really solidified just what a perfect fit we were for each other.
Mm,
And so it just, you know, it's just one of those things of like, there was never any, even though there was periods that I actually was back in Australia and he was in Scotland, there was never any communication issues. There was never any worries that he was off looking for someone else and things. And
mm,
there was just so much, it was just so solid that it was just
yeah.
beautiful to be able to like really like embrace that like special
Yeah.
relationship. So
Yeah.
when my parents
Very
were
cool.
over for our wedding, which was very beautiful, My dad got to talk to someone who was at the law centre. And he was like, oh, Bridie's wasted her law degree. She spent all that time in Australia. Like, he had seen how hard I'd worked. And he's like, but it's all been for nothing. Whereas I see my career as cumulative.
Yeah.
Everything has built on everything. Like,
Yeah.
while I did that law degree and now I don't use it, I learned so much. I got so many
Absolutely.
skills from it. I met so many people. I had so many experiences to shape the person that I am now. And I think that's something that I just wanted to like touch on, to mention that
Yeah.
other people will have their perspectives on your career, but you can like trust yourself, your intuition, and
Yeah.
know that we're all growing, we're all evolving. And that's a
Mm.
really special and important thing to way to think about your career.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think there's two really key points in there. One being the opinions of other people, and not being overly swayed by them. Sure, you might take advice or listen to opinion, but your life, your career, and as you said, your intuition about what is right for you. And the other one is the point about accumulative skills and transferable skills. And I think particularly when someone ends up going in quite a different direction, I think it's very easy for people to say things like, oh, you wasted that time, or you don't use those skills anymore. But of course you do. Like,
Yeah.
you use them, I'm sure, all the time. Just because they're not labeled law or conveyancing or
Yeah,
whatever
exactly. Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're not using, I don't know, critical thinking or questioning or communication skills, or like all of the things that you would have learned during that time. It's not forgotten. They're
Exactly.
building
Yeah.
blocks, aren't they,
Yeah.
to take you in perhaps another direction. But I think you still use those things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's like now almost, I know some people do talk about law almost as though it's more of a generalist degree, because
Yeah.
you can actually learn so many skills from doing the degree, whether or not you want to practice as a
Yeah.
lawyer. It
Yeah.
really teaches you a lot about like critical thinking. And probably one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was working as a property lawyer was taking something which was complicated, like a piece of legislation or a decision, and making it simple for a client, like translating that complexity. And then that really then started to shape what my career has been. Then after I was volunteering at the law centre, we had this connection with the university that was next door. And through that relationship, I developed a module for students, which was teaching them practical legal skills. But also, I was a lecturer, so I started teaching, intro to Scots law, law of the European Union. And again, the whole work of a lecturer is taking a complicated topic and
Yeah.
translating it into simplicity for a student. So I really enjoyed that period of my life. I wouldn't say it really suited me though, more from like a physical aspect. So something else that has really shaped my career is my chronic illness. I have Crohn's disease, and
Oh, wow.
definitely there's periods of my life that I'm well, and there's periods of my life that I'm not so well. And being a lecturer and having to stand and teach
Yeah.
from 9 a.m. in the morning and through till 1 p.m., my teaching
Yeah.
clock was. And that was incredibly hard on my health.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
you've got to put energy into it. You
so
you
yeah,
can't.
no,
Yeah,
yeah,
you've got to give so much of yourself through doing that.
yeah. There was so much about that that was so draining to me.
Yeah.
And even though it was amazing getting to shape and influence students and teach them and see them transform over a 12-week period, the effect it was having on my health was
Yeah.
really, really detrimental. But actually, again, kind of by, the outside factors that influence things, the university themselves decided to stop offering that as a course. So again, I was kind of like, okay, well, what's my next career step from here? I did consider really, like, should I complete my qualification in lecturing? There is something that I love around public speaking and being on stage, but also adjacent to that, I had been writing a food blog. So when I moved to Glasgow, it's got a very bad reputation for food. People have a very
It does. Deep
outdated
fried Mars
opinion
bars.
of what Scottish people eat. Exactly. And people would say to me, like, oh my gosh, how is it living in Glasgow? Like, they mustn't have any nice restaurants. And I was like, have you ever been to Glasgow? Like, they actually do have nice restaurants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
It
started.
was the City of Culture, wasn't it? Do you remember what year it was? Because I know that had a really big impact on
was that in
the
the
city
80s?
more broadly. I can't
or
remember.
more recently. They did have the Commonwealth
can't.
Games more recently.
Yeah, I remember because my dad is Scottish. My dad's actually from Glasgow, and it was I remember him thinking it was this huge deal that they, became the City of Culture. So
yeah, it's a very misunderstood city, and it's probably one of the most welcoming places I've ever been in my life. And there is so much art and culture and so many amazing things happening. But if it's not a city that people have been to, they definitely like go, ooh, scary.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's really not.
And I think because Edinburgh has the, has the castle and has the and has the hill, and I think more sort of classically beautiful, I guess.
Yeah,
it's a bit like the Melbourne Sydney thing, isn't it? Like,
it
Sydney
really
has
is.
the
Yes, yeah. But which one would you want to live in? Like, you would want to live in, you don't want to live in the touristy showboaty one, in my opinion. You want to live in the one that's like real and full of people. So again, that was, that's part of the reason that I really loved Glasgow. So I'd been writing this food blog called the Glasgow Food Blog. And this was at a time that, my readership consisted of my mum. But other people started finding it through this magical thing called Google. And that really blew my mind because I wasn't really very good at promoting it. I didn't know much about marketing. And so I saw this job opening for a San Francisco tech company called Yelp. So they're a bit similar to TripAdvisor, like a local reviews app. And they were looking for a community manager in Glasgow. So that role was essentially, a lot of it was online, writing reviews. There was also organising events for in-person, working with small businesses to help them get visibility. And I was like, wow, that job sounds so cool. Like, essentially, you just like work on your laptop in a cafe and be like out and about and meeting people and all of this. And I thought, oh, that sounds so great. And somehow
I'm sure they made it sound like that too.
It sounds so amazing. And to be honest, it was actually a really great job. But the downside being is it was your life. You didn't really work 9 to 5. You didn't even really work Monday to Friday. You worked every minute of every day for the business. So really now looking back on that 4-year period I was doing that role, that took up 100% of my time, my energy, my headspace. There was aspects that worked well for having a chronic illness, but also it was just so full on. I would be hosting like 3 or 4 events a week. There was so much, so much about, talking to people in real life, in online, nurturing relationships, trying to build this community. A lot of that role was also working with small businesses. So I got to know the businesses of Glasgow so well. And I would go in and I would say, like, what do you need? Like, how do you need to get more customers? And I really quickly started to realize that Yelp was just one channel. They needed a lot more than just this one app. When we think about how we find places, we don't just go to one website or one listing. So I think it was in 2016, Yelp as an organization decided to only focus on America. So they made all of the staff outside of the US redundant. And actually, for me, that was the best thing that could have happened because I was really burnt out from the role. I really felt like I had hit the kind of limit of how that role could help me grow. And like I was just seeing all these opportunities that didn't fit with what Yelp wanted me to do. So it was the perfect, like, what's the word, like springboard. That's the word. It was the perfect springboard to being a freelance marketing consultant. I really just wanted to take that knowledge that I had gained of how people were searching and finding businesses and help small businesses with that. And it was really the perfect way because I already had a network. I already
Yeah.
had all these businesses that I could say, hey, I'm available for freelance marketing consultancy. How can we work
Yeah.
together?
And the what I'm sure at the time it was happening, you didn't realize it, but the years of research that you'd actually been doing through your conversations with this business, you had a wealth of knowledge of everything they've been telling you over the years, and what's worked for them, what's not worked for them. You've got a huge database of information there ready to go.
Yeah. And even the digital marketing landscape was so different in 2016 and 17. Like, businesses were made on Instagram. All you needed was like a couple of posts to do really well, and that would be your business kind of made. And so I was just so interested in this idea of like all the marketing channels, how they would all work together. My first offering to small businesses when I kind of went freelance was social media management and also hosting events. But it was like I picked the two things that I found the most draining. And it was
Yeah.
just like within 6 months, I was like, oh, I've created a monster.
Yeah.
This isn't what I want to do. But the best thing
Yeah.
about freelancing and the best thing about being your own boss is you choose, like you get to set those parameters and you decide what you offer. And that's when I started learning about SEO. So over the years that I've been doing the food blog, that I've been doing Yelp, there was a lot that I had been trying to work on to understand how does Google search work? How do businesses get visibility? And then when I started actually applying those learnings as well to my food blog and to clients' websites, it was like a light bulb
Yeah.
going off for me of like, I love how this works. I love that I can invest my time and energy in something that brings longevity and traffic rather than
Yeah.
I've created an Instagram post that's only going to be visible for 24 hours and then no one will ever see it ever again. And it was something to do with that, like noticing what really suited my brain, like my love of spreadsheets, my
Yeah.
love of organization, my love of just, again, taking something complicated like SEO that a lot of people are terrified of and just even go, oh God, please don't talk to me about that. I can get anyone excited about SEO after 15, 20
That is a
minutes.
bold claim.
Oh, I can. I can change people's opinions from being like, I'm scared of it, I don't understand it, it's terrifying, it's pointless. I can change people's opinion about it. And then they'll be like a real enthusiast of like, yes, this is why SEO is so important and so valuable. And I think that then was really like the moment that I was like, great, this is what my business is. This is what I love doing. And this is what people are happy to pay me for. Like, and that pie
Yeah.
chart or that graph that's like
Yes.
the
Like
overlap,
Venn diagram
Yeah, the
of,
Venn
yeah.
diagram, that's the word I was looking for. The Venn
Yeah.
diagram of like, what do you need in life? You need to do something that you love, that people will pay you for, that brings you happiness. Like, and I was just like, yes, this is for me.
Yeah, and I think as well, you touched on it before, that you've also got control of your time. So when there's days that you feel better than others and days perhaps when you don't feel as well, like you're able to manage that. You're able to manage your own, I guess, energy in that sense. To what you've got to deliver, what your customers need, and you can kind of flex your hours and your input as you need.
Yeah, and that's a huge factor for me of like
Yeah.
scheduling my time, scheduling my calendar, scheduling what is happening this week. If things aren't going well, being able to like flex and move. But I think for me, there's a big element of like, I don't have to ask a manager. I don't have to ask for a
Yeah.
sick day. And there's something around, I think, just like the experience of being an employee with a chronic illness. There's something about not having to ask permission that is the thing that allows me to rest. of being able to
Yeah.
like listen to what I need, what my body needs. But at the end of the day, like I can also feel really fulfilled and happy that I'm doing really great work because I'm listening to
Yeah.
myself and resting when I need, as opposed to
Yeah.
like burning out, making things worse, being more exhausted. So yeah, it's been a really great chapter of my life.
And I think ultimately it's just more empowering, isn't it? Like you're getting back an element of control to say, well, I may not be able to control the overriding health issue, but what I can control is the parameters around that and how I do my best work and when I do my best work. And I can totally see that, yeah, it would make such a huge difference,
Yeah,
that sense of empowerment.
yeah. There was actually a conversation that I had with my gastroenterologist around it because this period of time in the last, say in the last year in particular, I've been on a particular kind of medication that is government subsidized. And, you know, it's expensive and it requires approval. But he was saying, isn't that amazing that the government can provide you with a medication that means that you're able to work and provide and be a part of the economy, as opposed
Yeah.
to if you weren't on this medication, you might not be able to work. And it's just a really positive way of like looking at these things that, you know, the government's perspective of like, you know, we're all dollar signs. You know, I don't have to feel like my net contribution is like a drain. I can feel like, you know, I've got a very successful business. I'm very autonomous and I can do all these things and achieve all of these things because I'm able to be on a really great medication that works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fun. That's fantastic. And you mentioned it there that I think you said it there, that you're now back in Australia. So somewhere along the line, you made the move back from Scotland to Melbourne.
Yes. Yeah. So I suppose when I made that move to Scotland, I was like, oh, I could live here for like 3 years. Like, and so, you know, we kind of had that conversation of like, how long would it be? Like 3 to 5 years. But as you settle into life and you settle into your routines and you get a dog, you you kind of forget, you know. And I think that
Time goes quick.
the time it
Yeah,
really does. And so
yeah.
it got to about the 10-year mark. And I think that was when we really kind of thought, okay, well, we're going to have to move back to Australia. A big draw card for me was I have nieces and nephews in Australia. And I didn't want to just be the auntie on the FaceTime. Like I wanted to be present in their lives and nearby. And so we started all the logistics for the move, and it was very exciting. I remember saying to my mum when I saw her at the airport in 2019, we'll be moving next year, Mum. It's going to be so good, you know. And my mum was like, there's something that makes me feel like we won't be moving next year. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
so weird. Why would you say that? But she was right. Then
She was
COVID
right. A
happened.
small thing happened. Yeah.
So COVID was definitely a big issue for us, partly because it was very hard to get into Australia.
Yeah.
So we eventually made the move in 2021, which was still during COVID. There was still lockdowns. Our dog made the move. So he came over and went into dog quarantine for 10 days. My husband and I came over and we went into hotel quarantine for 14 days, which meant that Joffrey got freedom before we did. It was
I'm
very
just not
surreal.
even going to make a comment
No,
on that because that's a whole can of worms.
I know.
I'm
I know.
just gonna gloss over that one.
Yeah. It was so surreal, such a strange time. And so I had a lot, you know, my whole client base at that time, I think, let's say 90% was businesses in Scotland, in the UK. And I thought with the move that some of them might say, oh, we want to work with someone who's closer. Because I actually had a client who I would go and work with them in their office once a week in Glasgow. So I made the move and kind of, you know, started up the business and everything here. And my UK clients actually said that they preferred that I was in Australia. And it actually comes down to the time difference of a lot of my clients
Okay.
like it, that if they've sent me things I can deal with it while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
They wake up at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
They get the answer. It's done and
Yeah.
dusted. So
Makes sense. Yeah.
yes, I tried not to take that personally, but they said that they preferred that I was in Australia. And so it's been a
Purely
really
practicality.
yeah. It's been a really interesting thing to kind of go through having a business that was very successful in the UK and almost kind of having to start again in Australia. But I'd kind of done that in the, like, by moving to the UK, I'd felt like I'd started again. And
Yeah.
so I don't see it as intimidating now because, you know, I've got all these years of experience and I've got that kind of like trust in myself that I'll make it work, like whatever happens. So I've now got some clients that I work with in Australia. Predominantly I'm working with like bigger organizations rather than the small business focus that I had in Glasgow, because that's where I feel like I can make the most impact of taking complexity, whether that's, you know, their marketing channels, their analytics, their organic search performance, and translating it into something simple, as well as like training staff members. You know, if they've got like a team member that they want to upskill in SEO or analytics, that's something that I do as well. So again, that's kind of like touching back on like when I was a lecturer, you know, I was doing teaching. So yeah,
it goes back to that point of no skill is wasted. You know, there's always some other incarnation of a way that you can use that.
Yeah. But I think probably one of the things is like that I've only learned this maybe in the last year is that self-reflection of like checking in with myself and saying, what am I doing? Am I enjoying it? Is this really lighting me up? Am I getting the best out of each of these client projects? As well as like having the ability to kind of look at where things are going. Because I think I get very down in like the weeds of like the day to day and forget to like have that bigger perspective. And I think that's where having someone that you can talk to that's a coach or an outside consultant to kind of help you look at those things, I think is so useful. And again, only something that I've learned in like the last year of my life of like, hang on, let's look at where we're going. Like,
it's so easy to do, isn't it? Like you say, you're not even in the weeds. You're just the day to day. You're busy. Stuff's going on. It's that I always use it's very easy to, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees. There's you don't have sometimes that perspective because you're so close to it.
Exactly.
And something that might actually be blindingly obvious to an outside perspective can be staring you in the face and you don't see it because it's just kind of, as you say, part of that day to day. And I think, as you touched on there, like the importance of reflection, I think it's one of those things that's quite easy to kind of poo-poo and like, oh, you know, particularly around New Year, because it feels like let's do a review, let's do this, let's do that, and you know, it all gets can get a bit out of hand. But it is so important, just that kind of self-check-in of, okay, am I still on the path that I think I'm on? Because sometimes you might have actually, something's changed and you've not even registered it. You've perhaps moved slightly further away from what you ideally wanted to do, or, you know, whatever the specifics might be. But just actually having that, step back and just that time. And I think actually that's where the Christmas and New Year break is particularly good, because it does just give you that time. You know, most people, certainly in the sort of, you know, broader professional services space, aren't working at that time. So you don't need to be worrying about checking email and being across things. You know, you get that funny period between Christmas and New Year where no one knows what day it is. And I think just that kind of subconscious thinking that goes on in the background when you're not actively thinking about something is really important. And I think that is one of the best times of years for that kind of thinking. And then, you know, suddenly one day you wake up with this great idea and it's just been percolating away in the background without you even realizing.
Yeah, for sure. So over the years, I've done like a few mentoring relationships where I've been the mentor and I've worked with someone who's maybe more like an early stage marketer. And the thing that I've always suggested to them, and, you know, it's even a reflection to do on a day-to-day basis if you are that way inclined. But to start to really take the time, like maybe in your commute on the way home at the end of the day, and really think back to the things that happened that day and try to find whatever it was, however much of the day it was, that was the thing that really lit you up, that really like energized you and got you excited. Was it being a leader? Was it teaching someone something? Was it identifying something in Google Analytics? Like something in your day, and it might not be every day, it might be, you know, one moment a week, but if you can start to notice what that is, and then, you know, really think about what that is and how that could shape your career and your career decisions, could be something really useful.
Yeah.
And you might find, hey, there is absolutely zero lighting me up. And maybe that's actually something as well.
Maybe that's something you should think about. Yeah, it's a really interesting and a great piece of advice. I similarly say that to people, and I sort of use the term of energy, like what do you find gives you energy, and what do you find draining. It's the same point, different words, but I think it is a really good way to think of it, because again, when you're just kind of doing the do, and you know, you're kind of on the hamster wheel, and you don't necessarily think of things in those terms. You're just like, well, these are the things I need to get done, I'll do them. And just actually thinking about, well, actually, you know, I did do that thing, I still delivered it, but my God, like I felt exhausted afterwards, and I felt like I'd dragged myself over hot coals to get it finished, versus, you know, that thing that actually took way longer or was way more complex, but wow, I loved it and I felt super energized by it. It's a really good, it's a really useful framing.
Yeah, it's so positive as well. It's a great way to think of, you know, you shouldn't be in a role or you shouldn't be in a career where everything is draining. That's not a good experience. And I think people realizing that work shouldn't feel like that.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's really useful about thinking about it in those terms is, I find so often when people are trying to answer those types of questions for themselves, or they're thinking about maybe what they want to do next, that they're trying to attach it to a job title or a career path, and it's too much too soon. You kind of have to break it down into the, what activities, you know, do you enjoy, I don't know, being around lots of people, less people, in an office, online, you know, all of those kind of building blocks of a role before you then kind of add in the job title over the top. It's far more helpful and gives you far more information to work with. And tying that into the earlier point actually about transferable skills as well, because if you're thinking about it purely from a skills and activities perspective, then you might be able to tie in something, you know, that you did 10 years ago that you've kind of moved away from, and actually go, oh, hang on, you know, when I was a lawyer, I did all of this kind of stuff. I can completely use that again. I can use that critical thinking. I can use my communication skills to simplify that super complex thing, and I can use it today. So yeah, I think it's a super useful framing.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing.
The other thing I just wanted to ask you about, I was going to say briefly, and I appreciate it's not a brief topic, but was kind of how SEO has evolved, because the phrase that came into my mind when you were talking about SEO before was a bit like it's the dark arts, you know, because it's kind of like something that I think a lot of people don't understand, certainly non-marketers don't understand. I think even for a lot of marketers, it's kind of the dark arts. It's the bit that they don't dabble in. And I think search more broadly has changed so much, and, you know, the advent of AI and all of that kind of things. Briefly, can you kind of summarize how you see what's changed and maybe what's kind of continuing to change in that space?
It's I feel like this is one of the most intense periods of digital change that we have faced. You know, whether you're talking about marketing or whether you're talking about human beings, everything that's happening now is it's like that. It's like the tension between, it's so exciting, it's so terrifying. And I think marketers are struggling with that kind of way of like, hey, we have to keep up, we have to be seen to be like ahead of the curve, but we also have to be seen to be using our best judgment and our ethics and critiquing things. But also we don't want to be selling snake oil, and it's all of these things that are all working in conjunction, and it's something that I have personally really struggled with. And so my fundamental belief, or like my fundamental approach to marketing, has always been like the website for the business is the heart of like where we are sending traffic to. And so that's why I've really loved SEO, because that's such a driver of that traffic. And now what we're seeing is maybe that search behavior that happens on Google search, maybe a user doesn't need to visit your website because they're getting the answer on the search result. And I think there's a lot there that we can do, and we can empower people to think about, of making sure that that information is correct. So say, for example, I was doing a digital audit of a client, and all of the information that was being mentioned in AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini was being sourced from other websites, not the client's website, but other websites. Yeah. There was actually a technical issue as to why AI tools couldn't access the website, so it was relying on third-party information. And even being aware of that issue is a huge advantage, as opposed to what a lot of people do, or what some people do, is just by burying their head in the sand and being like, I'm not going to address it, I'm not going to confront it, it's hard, it's challenging. I think that's a huge thing of why people don't like SEO. Like, seems complicated. What am I meant to do? How am I meant to do it? Work with an SEO consultant who you can trust and you can rely on, who's there to demystify things for you. And I think that's probably, again, like, it's kind of almost like a branding piece. The SEO industry has made its own job harder by there being a portion of people who are like, hey, just buy some backlinks, do SEO without us actually telling you anything about what that means. And I think that then can become like a really negative thing for the industry as a whole. Yeah. As opposed to, I want to work with a consultant who's going to train and guide and be very transparent with me. They're two completely different paths that you can go down. Yeah. And so I think it is all about, either making sure that you as a marketer or as a business owner are doing something to learn about like AI visibility and how that's impacting search. But what has been said by representatives of Google is, in tools like Gemini, what is influencing what Gemini references is the fundamentals of good SEO. So good SEO is still the basis, but then that is feeding into what gets cited in AI. But, we're in this super fast changing landscape that ChatGPT has just announced it's going to be introducing ads. A year ago, they said they would never have ads. We're just trying to keep up with these tools that are out there, and measure the impact on businesses. I do a little bit wonder, my theory is, when ChatGPT gave me its report of my 2025 in review, it said that I was in like the top 1% of users, and I don't actually use it that much. So my thinking is that maybe everyone thinking that they're trying to rush to keep up and adapt to this new changing landscape, is it really happening as much as we all think it's happening? Yeah. And then, like, yes, I know that the Google landscape is slightly different because that is actually pushing us to see the AI information. But is that what users want? Or do they want the experience of, they still want to do the searching and the research and verifying for themselves? Like, I would not want an AI tool to go and purchase a whiteboard for my office, which is what I purchased yesterday. I want to make the end decision about which one I need. I think sometimes people forget that human beings actually I enjoy researching a holiday. I enjoy planning where I'm going.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of this, like, we can disrupt everything and give everyone this perfect answer that they need immediately. But then where's the joy?
Yeah, there's a time and a place, and I think some things super well suited for, other things not. And if we're just trying to force fit it into everything, then I think that's when you see some kind of super clunky results, shall we say, if we can even call them results. But
Yeah.
final question, Briony, and it's always the final question, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
The element that has flowed through everything that I've talked about is just to trust yourself. I think I've been really strongly guided by my own intuition, and where I have not listened to my intuition is where I've made a mistake, but where I have trusted my intuition has been where I've taken what what I think has been the right path, like
Yeah.
taking that decision to go to Glasgow to be with my husband. Like, I now feel like I'm living my perfect happy life. Like, this is exactly what I actually don't even think I could have ever thought that this would be my life. Like, I'm so happy and everything has worked out so well. Whereas to me that other path would have been the path of like misery and sadness and being a lawyer but having absolutely nothing else going on in her life.
Yeah.
And so I think that has come from just trusting myself and believing in myself. And, it's one of those pieces that when you talk to someone else who's, maybe at any stage of their career, but you wish that they could feel that themselves too, as well, of like, if you could trust yourself, like, so it's like a habit to practice, just trusting yourself.
Yeah. And it compounds, doesn't it? Because once you start to do it, and then once you start to trust that feeling more, then you're more likely to trust it the next time and the next time and the next time. But you've kind of got to start somewhere. Like, there's that first time where you just have to kind of jump off the cliff and go, well, I don't really understand this, but it kind of feels like the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. And then when it works out, and as I say, it kind of compounds over time. But it's interesting that a version of that answer is one that comes up quite a lot. People word it very differently. Sometimes it's, I wish I had more confidence in myself. I wish I trust myself sooner. But it's all sort of variations of a very similar theme. And I do wonder if it's almost something that you do need a bit of time to get to, because you need that evidence, or you need that or more of a feeling of certainty. I don't know, but I think it is one of those things. If we could all just flash back and 20-year-old or whatever, 20-year-old me, and go, trust yourself, like trust your intuition. It's a big one.
I would trust the 20-year-old version of myself. She was a bit of an idiot. But I do actually, the bit that you said there that like resonated so much with me. And I watched it right before I moved to Scotland, was like the Indiana Jones movie, where he's about to step off and he has to take like the leap of faith, like, and that to me was like me stepping and going, well, I'm going to Scotland. But I also was able to rationalize it of like, what's the worst that's going to happen? The 100%. Worst that would have happened is I would have gone to Scotland. The relationship didn't work out. I moved back to Australia and lived with my parents, and I would have then, taken a different path. So I think I've always been able to do that kind of like ability of like, well, if I do this, then what if it doesn't work out? And so
I think it's super helpful and kind of a bit counterintuitive, because you think, oh, what's the worst that can happen? Like, why is that a helpful thing? But what you realize is that once you start to ask those questions and kind of, I often talk about kind of bringing that thing into the light. Once you bring it into the light, you realize it's not that bad.
It's not that
and you're
bad.
Like, well, if that thing did happen, then I would do X, Y, and Z, and I'd be fine. So that thing that actually seems super scary from the outside, if you break it down, it actually isn't that. It isn't that huge thing. I think it's a really, really useful thing to be able to do and kind of habit to get into. Thank you so much, Briony. As I said kind of halfway or early on in the conversation, we talk a lot about work and careers, and, obviously those things are an important part of life, but there's so many other more important parts of life. And, certainly, you know, your overall health, probably number one on the list, or very, very closely tied with, you know, love and the person that you want to spend your life with. And it's just been really lovely to have a conversation that's touched on those things, and yeah, to hear you kind of talk so openly about it. And it's really lovely. And it's also really lovely to hear you kind of get to the end of the conversation and say, and I'm really happy, and you know, I've managed to build a life for myself that maybe I couldn't even have pictured. So it's awesome to hear that. So thank you very much for sharing
Thank
it.
you so much for having me. It's been so delightful.